Hey everybody, Chris Schooker with Scott Johannes. We're with Digital Horizons, and we wanted to do a kind of behind the scenes overview of part of an installation that we completed a bit ago now. This was the, I guess, mechanical room, not real, I mean the AV networking mechanical room for a large property in the area that has several homes or several buildings on it, and everything comes back to this room. So we're just going to give some behind the scenes, like I said, of what went on in this room, part of the overhaul that we did to update everything, and give you guys a little bit of a background on the challenges of this one. So these are equipment racks.
Yeah, there's 3 equipment racks, and this was all equipment that was originally put in from 2006, 2007.
Okay. Yep.
I think this property took like 2 years to build.
Yeah.
And so it was a long time frame for the original installers to put this in, but it was all component video. It was old technology.
Yeah.
I mean,
Analog video, analog audio.
Right.
Yep.
And it was a lot of it too. And
how many in the house and everything that's connected to this? We'll probably just, because we got a lot to go over. How many TVs are connected to the components in here?
In the main house,
Yeah.
I think there's like 14 or 16.
Okay. And then how many zones of audio?
That, we're pretty close to 21, 22 right
Got
now.
it. And zone of audio being like pair of speakers or
Pair of
something like
speakers
that.
or a room, basically,
Got
a
it.
room of audio.
And then throughout the house in some of these zones, there were subwoofers, and we're talking in-ceiling, on-wall, outdoor speakers, kind of the whole mix.
Mixture of everything.
All fed from here.
Yep.
Now also in this, their network
Yep.
is run through this,
Which
right?
is behind Dustin there next to the door on the right.
Kind of the waterfall of
that was
patch panels.
that was a mess.
The other thing shown here in the upper right-hand corner, they had a phone system,
Yep.
right?
Yep. And
Did that stay in the update?
Yeah, we didn't do a whole lot with that. We cleaned up a couple of the wires going in and out of that corner, and there was a lot of things in here that had been just kind of maintained throughout the years, but it was different people coming in working on it, and things kind of got a little out of hand. I'm sure the original installers who did this, I mean, I got to give them credit. They had a lot of wires, and they had a lot, and you can see how many wires we're just trying to strip down the back end of the rack.
Yep.
And I mean, we pulled out boxes and boxes and boxes of RG59, like for video cables and audio patches, and it was an amazing amount of stuff we pulled out of there.
So now you're not just randomly tugging at wires, ripping things out. There's a process.
No, there's a whole process here. This is something we're going into it blind. I went out and scoped this out, kind of took this into account, went through the house, checked out every room, got an inventory of what all is going on.
We did a design.
Did a design based on what we assumed we could know from looking at it. You never really know what you're getting into until you do this and tear it apart. But as I was taking it down, I'm kind of marking things. I'm tracking where things are going, what type of wire is going between things. And I'm just trying to keep this in the back of my mind of where these things are going and what's happening.
Yeah.
So when we retro our system in, which is a media over IP system, basically all 3 of these racks are going to get condensed down to just 2 racks.
Plus we're adding some stuff
And
while
we're adding
condensing
stuff.
it.
Yeah, but everything is so much smaller, and it's mostly IP. It's mostly network connections.
Digital network connections, yep.
So before they had a couple Cisco switches in that rack over there by the door, and a router and an old US Robotics 56K modem that belongs in the Smithsonian.
Yep. And this is the other thing here too, the way the room was designed, which is another credit to the original company, is there's actually a floor system in here for routing, storing, accessing.
Raised floor, passageways underneath, right. And then they had all those panels that are around there, and as we're going through, we're also stripping stuff out of the panels because everything in here was in every possible corner of the room.
Yeah.
So we're going through, taking out everything that we don't need, tracing down lines. In between all of this work that's going on, I've got another guy going through the house, unhooking the TVs,
verifying things,
tagging wires, toning, coming back in, or calling us or radioing us or whatever, saying, hey, I got toners on this wire, it's for this room. And in between all of the stuff that's going on, we're actively toning things out and tracing things. Now, some of the wires, like the speaker wires, those big thick green cables that are laying there in the bottom of the rack,
Yep.
those actually had tags on the majority of it.
So we knew what they were.
So we assumed that's what they were, and we still ended up in the end going back through toning them before we hooked them up. We want to make for sure what they
Right.
were.
What zones, what speakers,
Yeah,
because it does matter for loads and routing everything.
And anytime you assume somebody labeled it right,
Right.
it's usually wrong.
You
So
get caught with your pants down.
Yep,
And it's
you're
not
better
good.
off just doing it right the first time.
So I think this video obviously is condensed significantly. How much time do you guys think you spent in this room day wise, not hours?
Just this room,
2 weeks?
I would
Off and
say
on?
I would say at least.
Yeah.
I think this project was quite long because it wasn't just this. I mean, this
Yeah.
is one room
Right.
of the main
This is the
building.
core of the
There's
system.
there's another whole building that has a smaller rack. That has 2 racks in
Yep.
it as well, which we condensed down to 1 rack.
Yep.
With a similar setup, but just far less rooms in the building.
Yep.
So we had to do the same type of thing that we did here in the next building.
Yep.
And so it just takes time.
Yeah.
And you just have to plan it appropriately. You have to, like you can see Dustin sitting there just sorting through things. He's trying to figure out where these wires are. I'm thinking he's toning them right now.
Looks like it. Yeah.
But you think you got something figured out, and you start tracing it, and you figure, oh, they got a splice somewhere. Got to go find the splice.
Yep.
Where is that? It's in the attic above the master bedroom. Good luck.
Yep.
Yep.
So now at the bottom here, the rack is taking shape. It looks like is that the media distribution in the bottom right of the far rack?
That's actually a bunch of, we've got networking
Okay.
equipment starting down there.
Okay.
So the very bottom and the bottom left, there's 3 amplifiers in there, and the
Yep.
very bottom on both racks is 2,000 watt UPSs.
Got it.
Now this
Battery
whole,
backups.
battery backups, but this whole property has a generator on it that runs pretty much everything.
Yep.
But you've got that ride through time, and we've got quite a bit of load going on there, and I don't want that equipment dropping while the 15 seconds or whatever
Yeah.
it is the generator
The
takes.
transition
So-
time for it to turn on and
right. So we put some pretty hefty UPSs in there. Plus
and we don't
we're-
put everything on there.
No,
we're
yeah.
putting the core.
the core stuff, but I mean, when you start looking at the finished product here, I mean, there's quite a few network switches. The switches that end up being in that far panel over there by the door are actually powered from the UPSs in the racks as well. So we're feeding a lot of stuff off of those UPSs. There's a lot of critical equipment going on. But there's a ton of network equipment, and most everything is PoE powered now. So
Right.
if that switch goes down, all the access points are down. The the controllers that are in each room go down, and it's going to take 3 or 4 minutes for it to come back up.
Yep.
Whereas if we can ride through on all of that stuff being live the whole way through, and the generator kicks in, then
The UPS kicks off and regular power
starts
takes
charging
through.
again,
Yep.
and you're back to normal.
Got
and
it.
you didn't skip a beat. The lighting system didn't go down.
Yeah.
It keeps it nice and consistent. It's the best way to do it for a project of this size. That's really what you have to do
Right.
if you're gonna do it right.
Yep. Do you recall at this point what you're working on?
I'm just making network patches.
It's like labeling stuff.
There's a lot
and
of them. Yeah, we had. Man, I can't remember how many access points are throughout this property.
7 or 8, right? In the main house.
Oh no, it's way more than that.
In the main house, or more than that?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's quite large, and there's a lot of stone everywhere. Yeah, there's a lot of network connections. I can't even imagine. I just can't even recall how much, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm used to making a lot of network
Yeah, right.
connections, but this is a lot.
It's always deceiving when we play back these videos. There's a lot of, we recorded a lot here, and it's condensed down to 13 minutes, but it's 2 to 3 weeks of time in this room, mostly there, but a little bit of off and on here or
mostly
there.
connections, making connections,
Yep.
putting terminations on. Your fingers get raw after a while, putting RJ45 connectors on. Yeah. And this particular property, we've got fiber optic uplinks. There's a little black box above the lower black box. That's the fiber.
One of the
There's
black boxes.
boxes everywhere, but right above the orange blob there's a fiber patch panel that goes out to all the other buildings.
Yep.
And so
It's
we
a
have
ring kind of.
yeah, so we have a core switch that's over there that basically that's the centralized hub. Everything from all those buildings comes back to there with fiber through SFP modules, and so we've got everything linked up. All the remote buildings are coming to here. One internet connection, but it's all one property. So
Fiber's
I-
great for that because you grossly supersede the distance limitations of category wire.
And you don't have problems with grounding
Yep.
and different weird ghosting things that you could possibly get and start screwing with you. But yeah, it's I was really glad when I started mapping this out before we tore it down that the original installers, the original people laying this out actually had made those connections between all those buildings
The
because
fiber.
right.
Yeah.
And we ended up changing how they had it laid out. They had one building that was kind of backwards, and I'm not sure what happened there, but they always had a network switch that had to keep being rebooted about every 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And they haven't had to do that once
Right.
now since
Yeah.
then.
So what's at the very top where we've got all the laser bars? What's the equipment that's going up there?
Left rack, the very top is satellite boxes that goes into the media system.
Okay.
And so those are shared throughout the house.
Describe what is the media? We
Media
call that
over
a
IP.
video distribution.
Yeah.
What does that actually do?
Short word for it is MOIP, but it's media over IP.
Okay.
And basically, what you're doing is you're taking a source like a satellite box,
Apple
has
TV, Blu-ray
anything-
player.
yeah, everything's HDMI nowadays
Yep.
anyway. But you're taking a source and you're pushing it into a encoder,
transmitter.
transmitter encoder, and it's putting it onto a multicast stream on the network. Now it's its own network. You don't push it throughout the house on the rest of the network because you're just basically going to choke the whole thing and it's going to crash.
Yeah.
But you have a dedicated network for all your video transmitters and receivers for all that data to flow throughout the house. And so, like, you take a satellite box, you put it on there, and that ends up being like a channel
Yep.
on the network.
Yep.
And so, when you want like a bedroom downstairs to access that satellite box, the control system just tells the transmitter or the receiver which stream to pull on, and
Yep.
it just switches over, and it gives you the video stream.
So the benefit of a house like this, the primary reason we use it is so that when there's 12 to 16 televisions, you can connect a smaller amount of sources and share them to all the TVs.
Right.
So there were 2 or 3 satellite receivers, but they're available on every
Everywhere.
TV.
Right. Same with
and
3 Apple TVs
Yeah.
and the camera system
Yep.
and you name it,
Yeah.
anything you want. It can be injected anywhere and it can be pulled off anywhere because it's network based.
Yep.
So we have a 48 port PoE switch sitting in there with all the transmitters and receivers plugged in, and you can feed it anywhere you want.
So there's a little bit of a before where we first started, and then what it finished
Yep.
with after.
Yep.
So shrunk it down to different racks. Did clean up the wires. Obviously, there was a lot of stuff that needed to be done there, but now it's a fully updated, current, just fully digital network, and it's there to be enjoyed and serviced and added on to, or whatever they decide to do. So.
The other part of it that we didn't mention was the power. We had power strips in there with smart outlets.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So now if they ever have a problem with satellite box, we can just open an app, or the homeowner can go to their app
Yep.
and say reboot
Reboot.
so-and-so's satellite box.
Yep.
Without having to walk down there and
Well,
unplug
and this
something.
mechanical room, which isn't evident by looking at it, isn't accessible from the inside of the house. So if it's 20 below and you want to reboot a satellite
You
receiver,
don't really want to go out there in your PJs.
rebooting a satellite receiver is annoying enough as it is, especially
Right.
if you don't have access to the power cord. So now they literally, either through a Control 4 interface or a dedicated app, they can do what Scott said. They just hit a button and it reboots it in the mechanical room, and that's available for everything, mostly everything on the system. So,
Right.
and largely why we install those isn't to enable the homeowner to reboot it, because they can, but it's usually we get the call and they say, hey, my satellite receiver is not working, and then we can do it for them and take care of it. And it also helps us monitor the network, because we'll get notifications if things are off. So if we see something offline and doesn't come back online, it allows us to, if necessary, be proactive about
Right.
servicing it and taking care of it. Sometimes even before somebody realizes it's out. So
Right.
it's I mean we put that in nearly every system that we
Yeah.
install now. Some of the smaller ones aren't justified in having it, but most systems, or if they're at least 45 minutes or an hour away, it becomes a kind of a deal breaker for us.
necessity.
If we can't
Yeah.
put it in, we kind of don't want to do it because it pays for itself. It's worth its weight in gold. So,
Yeah.
anyways, hopefully that was an enjoyable behind the scenes view of what we go through on a somewhat daily basis. And if you have any other questions, we'll probably have some links in the video description below. And have a nice day.